Hello, this is Michelle from Divine Intuition, and welcome to this little podcast I have here. Somewhere where I can just express myself, talk about a few things, channel a few things, or things that I intuitively perceive or feel, or just want to simply express. So I was thinking, since we are, in this season of Christmas holidays, when Christ was born. I kind of want to talk a little bit about that. I don't really want to make this into something religious, but I do want to talk about the meaning of what this really is deep down. Since we're in that kind of topic and we're in that energy, I kind of just want to speak a little bit about more about this Christ light, you may call it, or a Christ heart. The heart of compassion, the heart of love, compassion, and light. Just want to kind of talk about that, I feel, just because I feel it's very relatable to many things and to everyone and to a few people out there. So I feel like I want to kind of express more about that and explain more about that, just so that people have a better understanding of what of what it is to be a Christ being, or a person with a Christ heart, since we are in that season, we are in that time of the month for us celebrating Christmas, right? So let's talk a little bit about what it is to have a Christ heart. So there is an image I found online, and I think I posted it in my Instagram, so you can follow me on Michelle M. Tarot, my Instagram page, so I'll leave the link below. I also have my Divine Intuition Instagram page as well, so I will be posting there as well later on. But I did post this picture, and I kind of want to speak about it and read what I wrote here, just to go more in detail about what is a Christ heart in general. So this image that we see here, it shows a lamb with a halo, right? So this is the representation of like a Christ being, or someone with a Christ heart. And you see a bunch of wolves kind of trying to chew on this lamb, right? Trying to bite it, trying to harm it. Not really wanting to eat the lamb, but just just wanting to get its teeth grasped on the lamb. Kind of what I feel in this image. And wolves can be quite dangerous and can eat the lamb if they want to, right? So, because it is the prey, right? So, and the lamb is so vulnerable and allowing itself to be bitten, basically. So the wolves are tempted by that, right? So there is kind of like a representation here in this image that kind of like as if being kind of drawn by the light, kind of like moths being drawn by the light. And this is the lamb, which represents the Christ being, right? So I want to talk a little bit about that. So what does it mean to have a Christ heart, right? What does it mean for someone to have a Christ heart? To be someone who has a Christ heart means they are someone who come to this earth to be a sacrifice, basically. To be a sacrifice on this earth for the human race, right? Now we're talking beings that are much more ascended, right? Right? Because there are fractals of these beings in the earth. We are kind of fractals of these bigger, more higher beings that that have come here to really make an impact in the earth. We call them the masters, right? Like Buddha, Krishna, Jesus, right? And now we're basically focusing on Jesus for this month, right? And this Christ being. what it is to be a Christ being, right? But mostly it's the same kind of pattern when it comes to ascended masters. This is basically what they do. They do come here to be a sort of assistance to the human race. This is what bodhisattvas do as well. For bodhisattvas, beings who are, kind of ready to leave samsara, who are enlightened and have reached, a higher state and are ready to kind of exit samsara, don't exit for the sake of kind of saving the suffering of human beings, right? So kind of volunteering to stay here longer, in this samsara, for the sake of saving, the human beings or sentient beings in general, right? So similar with a Christ being, or a being with a Christ heart, right? So we're thinking of macrocosms and microcosms, right? The bigger fractals and then the smaller fractals of those bigger fractals, right? So yes, it's someone who has a Christ heart, means they are someone who come to the earth to be basically a sacrifice, right? They sacrifice themselves to come here. To be a sacrifice means you are leaving from a higher plane to come to a lower plane, right? From a higher plane to a lower plane in order to help those who are lost in suffering and in pain. So they basically come down to assist the human suffering. Similar to what the Buddha did and Jesus, right? Who are we're talking about Jesus, right? And all these other ascended masters did. So very similar to what they did, right? So let's pretend someone with a Christ heart is this luminous seed that comes down to the earth, right? So just envision this beautiful seed that comes from a higher plane and is slowly going down towards a lower plane. But it's this luminous seed that comes down to the earth. Now let's pretend this earth is a small jar filled with seeds inside, right? But the jar is too dark inside. So this luminous seed that enters the dark jar full of seeds, so just pretend that it's going down the seed, that it's entering the dark jar full of seeds. Seeds that need to learn to live amongst themselves in a small jar. So the earth is not that big, to be honest. The earth is quite small with a bunch of human beings with different race all kind of cramped in there, That's what earth is like, right? Full of people that have to learn to live together, right? And learn how to cooperate with each other and have a good relationship with, right? And that's quite a struggle because, we still are going through fights and conflicts, and there are many wars still around the world, right? So it's kind of like putting a bunch of children in a playground and kind of forcing them to get along with each other, right? Because that's what we are. We're basically children here on this earth, and we all have to learn to get along amongst ourselves. So this is why I like to use a representation of a jar, a small jar, meaning the planet Earth, right? Full of seeds. So we are kind of like those little seeds, that need to get along with each other amongst this earth, this small jar. Why do I say that it's a dark jar? Well, there's darkness, of course. There's not much illumination because we're actually lost in our ways. As human beings, we are quite lost in our path and we are asleep. We're not awake. Although we are going through waves of awakening, right? We're still quite in the dark, right? But we're talking about, I think, 2,000 years ago, or, so when these masters came at a time when there was more darkness in the earth, right? So these beings did sacrifice themselves. These ascended masters did sacrifice themselves to come down to bring forth a bit more illumination into this earth, into this small jar full of seeds, right? So being someone with a Christ heart means you are sacrificing yourself to help those who are ill in the mind. Humans who are broken inside, perhaps have gone through abuse, maybe had a very bad childhood or adulthood. So it varies, right? So human beings, we're not all perfect, and we have complications. We have adversity in our lives, right? We have many cases, right, of different stories of how our childhood came, or how our adulthood came to be, right? And we have a lot of karma. So a lot of karma that we have to go through in life, and to resolve the situation, to learn from it, and and kind of cleanse that karma that we have, right? So, and it's quite challenging because it's an endless cycle of suffering, right? Well, like the Buddha mentioned, right? So yes, there's a very variety of different cases of what we as human beings have gone through in our lives, and that can affect our mental state, right? It can affect our emotional state and our physical state. So we can be emotionally damaged. We can be damaged with our mental health. We can be physically damaged, right? So a lot of things, we're not perfect here in the earth. A lot of us are quite broken. And so that's why these beings of Christ heart come, basically to assist these humans, to assist sentient beings who are going through that type of suffering. Basically humans that are easily corrupted and influenced by major companies, for example, or corporations, since the majority of the population here that have control on Earth are major corporations and companies, right? And they have more power here. So obviously, a lot of us will be influenced by them. And a lot of us have been corrupted by them, or a lot of these companies and corporations have been corrupted. And like I mentioned in my previous podcast, they are like viruses on the earth, right? Viruses on this earth which sooner or later will be removed. So the nature of a human being that is ill in the mind, who are broken and are lost and have karma to deal with in this life, can't help themselves to either attack, harm, challenge, criticize, and obsess over these beings of Christ consciousness that have the Christ heart, which is why it is considered a sacrifice to come to this dimension to help assist humans and help this planet Earth. Most likely, you will not be rewarded and you will not be treated well here on Earth while doing this work, because humans have lost their soul and are corrupted by viruses, a virus of the mind. So this is kind of like a sad truth, actually. It's real, it's true that, these beings, they don't come here to be rewarded. Absolutely not. And these beings, like these ascended masters, especially beings with a Christ heart, or have come with a Christ consciousness, like Jesus Christ, he's one ascended master. They don't come to be praised or to be glorified. They come to suffer, and because they're sacrificing themselves. They sacrifice themselves for the sake of saving people in a way, right? So they are very aware that human beings here on the earth are not quite well in the mind, right? Because it is a place that's in darkness. It's a jar full of seeds that is in darkness, and they are the luminous beings that come down to assist the beings to find light and illumination. So this is what I mean, that it is not a job to be rewarded from. You will not get reward. You're going to get the opposite. You will, because you're a sacrifice, you will go through a lot of pain, right? And suffering in that sense, because the people around you don't seem to understand who you are and what you're doing here. Or in this case, we're talking about Christ. At that time, people did not comprehend what this being was and who he was. Many were drawn to him, into his light, right? Because that's the purpose of his purpose of being here, is to be that luminous being, and to perform all these miracles, let's just say, right? He was different. He was an ascended being, right? And so being in the darkness, of course, will trigger all these wolves, let's just say, that represent beings or human beings that are broken, ill in the mind, or corrupted. So you won't be treated well. That's the thing. And that's the sad reality with a lot of people here who are in service in the earth. When you're in service here on this planet Earth, being of service doesn't mean that you're going to get validation, right? Being a being of service means we never get validation for the sacrifices we have done. People overlook us and take advantage of us, or even break us, right? Like what happened to Christ. A being in service is not an easy job. People overlook until one day they wake up and realize what you have done for them was far more greater gift than anything given to them. And one of these days, these people will wake up and it'll be too late, right? The service has been done and perhaps you won't be there anymore. But what is important is that the service has been done, right? Just like what Christ did and gave himself as a sacrifice, to bring more illumination for the human race. So that's what it is to be in service. It's just we don't get that validation. Instead, we are treated the opposite. That's why this job is not easy. And especially someone with a Christ heart is not easy, right? It's quite a rough journey. We are kind of like small fractals of these bigger fractals, of these bigger ascended beings. We're here on Earth. A lot of us are kind of small fractals of that. And we kind of lose track of what it really means to have a Christ heart, right? So we have to sometimes remember where we come from and why we're doing this in the first place. Because sometimes we fall asleep as well. And sometimes wolves can really harm us and break us, right? Or it's just a representation of beings or human beings who are not well in the mind, who are ill, who are broken, right? They can be like wolves. They can be like sharks. You can call them sharks, or you can call them tigers and lions, biting hard with their sharp teeth on this lamb, or with their sharp claws, grabbing onto these beings that have a Christ heart, and most of the time challenge or harm them. So they will often obsess over them like a moth being drawn to a luminous light. These humans who attack and harm these beings who have a Christ heart are often full of greed, desire, power, and are broken inside. So that's why, it's a magnet between each other. They're drawn to each other because as a being of light, and a being that has a Christ heart, you are there so in order to be a magnet to these humans or these people or entities or sentient beings for the sake of kind of healing something in them, or kind of bringing illumination into them, kind of saving them from their suffering, you may say, right? Similar to something what the Buddha does, except with the Buddha, he got a lot of praise and attention, right? He was respected as the Buddha. But with Jesus, or the Christ, he wasn't. Although he was trying to, say that he was a son of God, he was not treated like that. And, instead he was killed, right? So there's a difference, being the king and queen of heaven. When you come down here, you're not going to be treated as the king or queen of heaven. And that's what I'm referring to as being a sacrifice and being someone in service, right? Whereas someone that is Buddha nature or Bodhisattva, who is trying to teach the human race to find enlightenment, to end human suffering, and to kind of exit samsara, they have a different purpose. It's more of a practical skills that they are trying to give to the human race, right? In order to kind of escape and leave samsara or end suffering at an earlier stage in your evolution, perhaps. Whereas beings of Christ are more sacrificial. They're not here to be respected and, praised, let's just say, even though they are kind of like the kings and queens of heaven, sacrificing themselves to be here, to save the human race, in a sense. But instead, it's the opposite. They are looked as very low, or they can be tormented, they could be abused, and they could be taken advantage of. And these beings can't do anything because they surrender to it. That's the thing. They surrender themselves to the wolves, right? So it's not much they can do. It's just part of their mission here. It's part of their sacrifice to come here to Earth to be like that, right? So yeah, it's quite hard and challenging, especially during that time when Christ came, right? When a being of light comes down to the earth to help these beings that are in darkness, right? And yes, now I feel like there's fractals of us from, a being of that has a Christ heart, in a sense, right? And now we learn about boundaries here on earth, so we're kind of advancing now, but there are many beings still out there that are still in that darkness, and we are still trying to push ourselves forward, from that. And in time, I feel like we'll slowly kind of elevate our frequency, and we'll raise until we'll go in a higher vibration. We'll elevate ourselves in a higher frequency, raise our vibration. Beings, will be more illuminated. That's where we're trying to head towards. We're trying to head towards that, right? And in order for us to head towards that path, there will be beings that come down here to kind of give us a push, right? To kind of either sacrifice themselves or give us kind of awareness and awakening to progress in our evolution. As the earth ascends, right? The cells of the earth have to also ascend. And we need a push, we need help, right? So these beings do come to sacrifice themselves to come down to this lower plane, lower dimension, right? To assist the human race and push them forward into a higher vibration. Or, it's kind of like what Eckhart Tolle said, is that, human beings right now are like an opaque rock, right? You don't really see through this opaque rock. But as, we start to, ascend, as we start to evolve, we slowly will become like a translucent crystal, like a clear crystal quartz, that's what I would say, where you can kind of see through the rock and be illuminated beings as well. That's where we're heading towards. That's why crystals have such are very powerful kind of minerals, because it's kind of like seeing an enlightened mineral. You grab any regular rock that's opaque, put it beside a crystal, translucent crystal, and you see that they're completely different, right? We are right now this opaque rock, but in the future, we're going to become this translucent, luminous crystal. And that's what we're heading towards, right? And that's why these ascended beings come to the earth in the first place, to push us forward in that direction, right? That's why it's good to believe in, well, not believe in all religions, but just take what you feel is right in each religion, because each religion has its truth. Because they're all basically teachers that come down to the earth. They're just like us. They were once like us. That's what I'm trying to say, is that these beings were once like us, right? And taking a look at them is kind of seeing what we can become in eons and eons from now, right? Right, so we have to go through multiple reincarnations, and we have to go through a lot of experiences and lessons to reach like that, like a lotus flower, needing to leave the mucky waters and then finally blossoming into the light. So that's where we're heading, right? And it's just good to understand these concepts of what these ascended masters really are and what they were here to do in the first place, to assist us here on the earth. So yes, it's something good to be mindful of and to be aware of, seeing that we are heading towards Christmas, and which is Christ's birthday, right? And to see what it is, what Christ consciousness is all about, and what a Christ heart really is, and what an ascended master really is, right? So that these beings that come from higher planes, that come to watch over us and sacrifice themselves, even though we hurt them, they forgive us and help us transcend, right? So that's quite beautiful. They're like our parents, right? Parents that we hurt, or elders that we hurt. But when they look down at us, they just see us as children who are in pain, who are broken, and who are suffering inside. So that's what it means to have a Christ heart, having that compassion for beings who are like that, right? So yes, so all right, so I just wanted to talk a little bit about that. Just wanted to express that, put it out in the open, and speak a little bit more about this later on. I'll talk about other things and see what I channel and what I want to talk about further on. So yeah, so hope you enjoyed this lovely podcast, and I hope you have a wonderful night and wonderful holidays, or a wonderful Christmas for those who celebrate Christmas. If not, then have a beautiful, wonderful holidays, and I'll see you guys again in my next podcast. Have a wonderful day, afternoon, and night. Bye for now.